In this section, we're going to be talking about planning and specifically how to do as much of your planning as possible on a single piece of paper. And the reason why this is important is because it's going to get you into a mode of taking action quickly, because you're not going to have an unlimited amount of time, an unlimited amount of space in order to just endlessly plan things out. It also keeps everything in one place so you don't lose things and then you're missing a piece of your vision. The idea is it really forces you to think. It forces you to boil down what's important, what isn't, and prioritize things so that you can focus on what really matters. One of the biggest problems people have is they overwhelm themselves with information and they're unable to prioritize. And when you can't prioritize, you can't focus and you get overwhelmed, and then it's even harder to focus. So, this is a strategy where you take out your notebook and on a single piece of paper, whatever problem you want to solve, whatever project you want to work on, you train yourself to put everything in a single piece of paper, and then you iterate weekly. So you go back to that piece of paper at the end of the week and you look at, okay, what did I accomplish? What's still missing? And then you add another page to it. And then you just, every time you're working on that project, you come back to that single piece of paper. It's also something that you can do digitally, but I highly recommend you do it on paper because it's going to help you focus more. If it's something where you're collaborating with other people, that's a situation where you probably want to have an electronic format because otherwise it's hard to make it work. One thing you can do with digital format is you can use headings. Another thing you can do is create a Google Slides presentation, change it so that it's in portrait mode instead of landscape, which you just do by going into the file menu and go into page setup. And then you can create various sections, various text boxes, and then you just create a new slide. You just duplicate the slide each week as you're iterating and going through the process. So it's really important to keep everything in one place, know where something is, and train yourself to fit everything on a single piece of paper. Because what happens is, really, you can have a single piece of paper and still not accomplish that in a week. So a lot of people plan things out and they make things way too complicated for themselves, and then it becomes too overwhelming, or they lose track of all the different papers, all the different pieces of the puzzle. So training yourself to work on a single piece of paper is extremely powerful. We're going to be talking about different ways to do that as we go through the course. But right now in this slide, you're looking at the basic tool of when you have some sort of problem or some sort of project you want to work on. This is the template that you use. So the number one thing is to get a sense of what are all the problems, what are all the issues that you're dealing with. And this can also serve as an emotional dump. So what you're doing is you're getting all the ideas in your head, all the things that are annoying you, all the things that are giving you anxiety, you're nervous about because you're not sure how you're going to solve it. You're getting your brain out of that state of overwhelm. So this is the first thing. This is kind of the trigger that's going to tell you, okay, I should put together a one pager. You have some sort of problem. You're starting to feel overwhelmed. It's not something that you can tackle it all at once with a single action right now. So what you do first is you list the big problems. That's why that's the first box right there. And then the second thing you do is you come up with a vision of, okay, ultimately, what do I want to create? Sometimes you're going to have a very clear vision of that. Sometimes it's not going to be about what you're creating at all, but it's about how is this going to affect my life? How is my life going to be different? How is it going to be easier? And in this vision part, you're plugging into those 6 human needs, those ultimate things that are going to motivate you to want to complete this project. And it's important to get clarity on these things and really think to make sure that you're getting all the different factors. And you can also cover factors that maybe are preventing you from wanting to achieve this goal or solve this problem, and then look for ways to solve that. Maybe there's conflicts. Maybe there's things that kind of go against each other. That's the second thing. So you're starting off with the problem, but then you're also trying to imagine the solution. And if you don't have a good idea of what the solution is going to look like, then take the perspective of, well, how is it going to affect you personally? How is it going to affect other people? How is it going to affect your day-to-day life to have this thing figured out? And that's something that you can come back to when you're wondering, well, why am I doing this? Because it's easy to get lost there. The next thing is sorting your ideas. So you start out with these two boxes that are below: unsorted important ideas and random ideas. So random ideas are those things that probably aren't as important, those things that you're not sure exactly how it relates, but you came up with the idea, or you just have no idea what to do with an idea, you just put it there. The big important ideas, the usually it'll be two or three important ideas, big ideas that you've come up with, those will go in this unsorted box. And then what you do is you take those ideas, you look at the problems again, you look at what your final result is, and you start to prioritize those. And one great way, really easy way to prioritize ideas is you might have a list of, let's say, 5 ideas. So next to each idea, you go down, and if it's important, you put, or even slightly important, you put 1 dot to the left of it. Then you go through again, you think, well, are these very important? Which one of these are very important? And if they're very important, you add another dot. And you keep on going through and setting a higher and higher level of importance. And eventually, and especially with a large list, that's where this really helps, you'll eventually get a different number of dots next to each one of those bullet points or each one of those ideas. Another way of thinking of an unsorted list is the difference between, on a website, if you've ever done HTML coding, or just in Word or Google Docs, is bullet points are unsorted, is an unsorted list, whereas a numbered list is a sorted list. So you're trying to take these ideas that you've come up with and get them into a prioritized list of ideas or things that you want to implement. Part of what you should be thinking about is there any dependency here? So are there certain things where I can't accomplish them unless I get something else done first? And that thing that it's dependent on, is there anything that that thing is dependent on? So you want to try to organize in a sequence of time how these things are going to work out. That's where the visual model of the process comes into play. So at the same time that you're prioritizing this list, you can also start to draw things out. Draw out a very simple flow chart, or just type things out or write things out in some sort of spatial diagram, so there's a sense of, as you go from left to right, time is going by. So on the left should be things where you're in the beginning stages, on the right should be things at the final stages. And in terms of up and down, things that are maybe the most important would go on top, and then things that are less important or dependent or secondary things, those would go underneath on the second and third levels. And if you want to learn more about flowcharts, there's stuff like swim lanes. I'll eventually be putting out a course just on flowcharts and kind of systems thinking, because this stuff is really important, especially when you're solving bigger projects, bigger problems. But this is what you want to start out with. You want to start out with setting up the problem and the solution, and getting really clear on that, and getting yourself out of a state of overwhelm. So the trigger for creating this is, I want to get out of overwhelm. I can't solve this immediately. I need to write things down. I need to clear my working memory. So you take everything out of working memory, you put it into that first box. Then you think about anything else about the vision, you put that in the second box. Now it's about getting all your ideas out of your head. So you figured out the problem, but what are your ideas for solutions? What are the different resources you have at your disposal? Maybe there's people that you could talk to. Maybe there's pieces of software, tools you could use, things you need to research. That all goes in here. Then there's those random ideas, those things that probably aren't that relevant, or things that just came out of thin air one way or another. They don't make a lot of sense, or you probably eventually won't use them, but you want to have those written down for no other reason than to just make sure that it's not bumbling around in your working memory. You want to have it on paper so you don't have to think about it anymore. Take all this stuff, put it in a prioritized list of ideas, put it in a visual model, and that's going to give you the ability to set up a plan of action. So what should I do on Monday? What should I do on Tuesday? What should I do on Wednesday? And set up a sequence of, whenever you're thinking about, okay, I have some time to work on this project, what should I do? You can come to this prioritized list, and instantly it's going to tell you what you should do. And if you get lost, you have that visual model, you have that flow chart you can look at to get it all back fresh in your head.